Welcome to the Rocket MSP podcast. I'm your host, Steve Taylor. The following is an interview with Channel Program. I have Matt Solomon, co founder and chief business development officer, alongside his colleague, Amy Roman, chief marketing officer. Channel Program is pretty new to the MSP channel, though the co founders, Kevin Lancaster and Matt Solomon, are well known in the industry from their days at ID Agent and then Kaseya. Matt and Kevin founded Channel Program with the goal to make it easier for MSPs to work with vendors. The primary service they offer at this time is their monthly channel pitch event. At first glance, it appears to be an easy cash grab for them, where they partner with and charge vendors a probably large amount to participate in a 7-minute channel pitch to hundreds of attendees. But when you pull back the veil, you'll see that there's actually something deeper happening here. Channel Pitch will be closely followed by other MSP focused launches, including their Channel Cash program, where MSPs are drawn at random, lottery style, for a chance to win cash that can be used as marketing development funds, also known as MDF. While some channel vendors offer MDF and other programs for MSP partners to take advantage of, some MSPs will find that there are just a ton of hoops to jump through, making it feel impossible to ever actually take advantage of these programs. While I'm not entirely sure a lottery is the best approach to fixing this actually big problem that happens in the channel, I know that Matt and Kevin are trying to attack this from the middle. They need to appease the channel vendors that they're going to work with while giving MSPs a chance to actually take advantage of these funds. Keep listening for the entire interview where we talk about channel pitch, channel cash, vendor channel programs, and other opportunities to work with your partners to grow your brand. Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing good. Thank you for having us.
Hi, Steve.
Awesome. Awesome. So, channel program, that sounds like just a really generic thing that all vendors do.
Yeah.
So what are you?
Well, you would have loved, being in the room when we were whiteboarding all the different names that we had. And,
Uh-huh.
you know, and channel program was always there, and it was it's an obvious kind of name. It is generic, as you mentioned, but it's great for a domain name, right? Channelprogram.com, very
Mm-hmm.
simple. Really what we're out here trying to do is create an ecosystem, a new community for the way MSPs and vendors communicate with each other. I came from ID Agent and kind of had all the benefits from a vendor perspective on being in front of the MSP audience at in-person events and having a main stage, but that's not the reality for a lot of the vendors. And, so it's not an even playing field. And then in addition to that, on the MSP side, that means they're also not hearing from the emerging vendors who might be stuck in a booth or maybe couldn't travel during COVID. So we're trying to create a new platform and give emerging vendors more of a voice, but then also bring in thought leadership from the MSP side through video enablement and social media into the platform. So we're really trying to raise the profile of everybody and give a lot more voice to the MSPs into what is happening in the channel.
Very neat. Now, you were with ID Agent. Amy, where did you come from?
I actually came from an MSP. So I worked at a more local MSP in the Northeast area. We were actually a top 100, and then we were acquired by a larger MSP. And when I was there, I assumed a position in the heading of customer success.
Okay. And your domain is channelprogram.com, correct?
Correct.
So you have a beautiful website, uh, great logo, great branding, catchy names for all the things, right? So, I see a channel pitch, channel explorer, channel cache, and then the channelfied podcast. So let's talk about the one that everyone wants to talk about, channel cache. Because that's the first thing that jumps to my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so that came from, when I was with ID Agent, I was on the road, like 50 different conferences for 2 straight years. So it was really all around the world and had the opportunity, the unique opportunity to speak with MSPs across the world and got a unique perspective. Whether it was during the event at the social events that there were in the space. And I would often ask people in the space, like, what challenges are you facing? What things did need solving in this space? And oftentimes, uh, marketing development funds came up quite a bit. MDF,
Hmm.
right? We ID Agent, we got asked all the time about MDF, and we were in our position at ID Agent. We were an emerging vendor, and our partnership value was not the same as a backup vendor, right? Where it could be some MSP contracts are hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that wasn't our case. So we weren't able to fully do an MDF program, and so I just started thinking about this more and more, and had conversations with my co-founder Kevin Lancaster about it. And one of the other challenges that MSPs brought up time and time again is that each vendor, and understandably so, has a different process to get MDF, to qualify for MDF, and it can be a cumbersome application. And even when you've done all the application, you've done the event, it can be challenging. You have to provide ROI reports, and you have to sell a singular product. When as an
Hmm.
MSP, that's not really how you sell, right? You're trying to sell your entire stack
Of
of
course.
services. And so that's where Channel Cash kind of came out of. And what we launched with it is the idea of a vendor agnostic or vendor independent, however you want to refer to it, MDF program, where we're giving away between up to per quarter $50,000 in cash and discounts from the industry to MSPs. And what we've done is we've simplified the application process. We'll be launching that pretty shortly in terms of the application process. It's going to really be like 2 minutes. It's going to give us your information, what event you want to put on, and we're not asking for ROI reports. We're not asking you to sell a singular product. You can do really whatever you want as long as it's within the realm of marketing activities. It could be lead gen, webinars, in person events, lunch and learns, things like that. And our big ask for you to qualify is to come participate at our channel pitch events that we're putting on monthly and give your feedback live during those channel pitch events to the vendors. So it's a little bit of participate in our community and give the feedback, and we're going to reward you for participating with channel cash. So our grand prize is going to be $5,000. We're giving away, I think, 10 $1,000 winners, I think $2,500 in winners, and so forth. So they'll be randomly selected. But one really neat thing is you can increase your chances of being selected each quarter. So Steve, if you have an MSP and you bring a technician or a salesperson to the channel pitch event and three of you attend, well, you've now tripled your chances of winning. So it's really about giving back to the community. And I think we're going to see a lot of neat activities, and it'll be really cool to hear back from the MSPs that have, you know, won the MDF, the channel cash, and see what they did with it, and come out with reports that we can give back to the MSP community. Because my favorite thing to do is provide success stories to MSPs, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel with any of this stuff. You can
Hmm.
put your own twist on it, but you don't have to start from scratch. And that's one of my favorite things to do, is to share success stories with other MSPs.
I like that. Now, the thing that we're looking out for the MSP here, so don't be alarmed.
Yep.
The thing that I don't love is it's like a prize.
Hmm.
This is if we were to work directly with the vendor, it's not a prize.
Right.
It's here's here's what we provide, and here's the 2000 you need to make this event happen, or whatever, right? And obviously, yes, there's some accountability, but I think there should be. They're giving you these funds kind of in good faith, and you need to show that you're being almost like a good steward of these funds. So I don't see any problem with that. With what you're doing, you're making it like the Hunger Games. Like it's it's just who randomly select some people to get some money, and hopefully it goes well.
Well, I mean, I'd push back a little bit on that in the sense of, and I understand exactly what you're saying. But
Hmm.
number one, you could spend all that time filling out an application, and you say it's them giving you, but there's no guarantee that they're going to give you the money. So you
Right.
could have invested all of that time as well. That's the thing, is we're not asking for a huge investment of time or energy into this. So it is definitely a little bit different. I totally understand what you're saying, but there's no guarantee of those funds either. It's not a randomly selected, but they're reviewing obviously the different applications they get, and they could choose not to give you the MDF. So there is that opportunity. So yeah, I understand why where you're coming from on that, but I think because of and Amy, feel free to chime in with any of your opinions, but yeah, I think because of the ease of this program, that's part of the way we're doing it. Because we're
Yeah.
making it so easy to qualify for it.
And keep in mind, Steve, all of this is kind of phase one of what it is that we're going to be offering, both from a platform perspective as well as from a services perspective. So this is phase one of Channel Cash. We're going to launch this. We're going to get some learnings. We're going to get, I mean, this is the whole point of this, is to get feedback from the community and then to evolve just the way we're talking about that vendors are going to change their product development roadmaps based upon feedback. So this is phase one. We're going to launch this. I was the person when I was at the MSP, I headed up the marketing and sales team. So I was the person, and I went through that process. Trying to get MDF funds was so arduous and so time consuming. And so what we did is we looked at it and we said, okay, we know that this is a need amongst IT service providers. This is kind of evolution one of our idea of how we can start to meet that need. And I can see if the feedback's good, that it's going to evolve and grow over time.
Okay.
That's kind of my job. So better, right?
And looking at this, I've got some assumptions, so your first pitch is tomorrow. It's at 11 o'clock Eastern, and you have 8 vendors presenting: Armor, Gradient MSP, SAS Alerts, Wasabi, Compliancy Group, Mail Protector, Servosity, and Zorus. And there are prizes in order, that's probably the the hook, right? That's the way to get people to come register and watch. Is they come in, they watch, and our goal is to get them to stick around. And so you'll select 300 people randomly from all that, and those people will win.
Well,
Um,
yeah. So I mean, that's just a piece of it.
sure.
With the channel cache, I mean, pitch by itself without the MDF component or channel cache component, we believe we're changing the way an MSP can interact with a vendor, and is maybe it'll help if I explain what that is. So channel pitches, we're inviting 8 innovative, new, in some cases brand new emerging vendors in the space, and we're asking them to give a 7-minute presentation, cut out all the fluff, and focus in on 5 areas that an MSP will care most about, so that they can digest what these different vendors are doing in a much more concise way. And so those 5 areas are: what problem are you solving? What makes you different? What's your pricing structure? How do you make me money more secure, more efficient and my clients, depending on the services you're offering? And what does the partnership look like, right? What are the sales enablement materials you're providing? Is there trainings, et cetera? And we're allowing the MSPs to attend anonymously. So, when you go to certain industry events, you're giving up your information to 30,
Mhm.
40 vendors at once. So this is a complete different twist on it, that we're allowing MSPs to come here, listen to these vendors in a very concise way, not have to give up their anonymity unless they choose to, and then also give feedback directly. Because after each pitch, we're going to ask 6 quantitative and qualitative questions where the MSPs can anonymously give that feedback. And we think we're addressing an area of where, we're not, nothing's going to solve in the sense of like MSPs and vendors are going to always be up here on the product roadmaps and things like that. But what we're trying to do is bridge some of that gap and give MSPs a larger voice in
Mhm.
what's going on with these vendors and what's resonating and what's not. I mean, you could literally tell a vendor through this, like, hey, this is not what you just said about this. I don't care about as an MSP at all. And so, we're giving them more voice.
Okay. Now, that is essentially what I don't have the six quantitative qualitative questions. Some of these things I don't do, but this is something that I've been doing for years. So I like that there are other people that are finally getting on board with, hey, let's not force people to register for this event, just so they can watch and learn and figure out, is this company even worth using? Because that's the worst, is when you get stuck in one of those marketing funnels and you can't get out.
Yeah, I mean, Amy, you could probably speak to that from the MSP side.
You got to watch out for those marketers. No, we agree. And I mean, whether it's from a technology standpoint or just as general consumers, I mean, we're all inundated by marketing messages. And as marketers on the other side, we have to figure out, how do we break through that clutter and actually provide value to the people to whom we're speaking. So one of the things that we felt was really important with this is to have someone be able to choose to attend this event 100% anonymously. So if you want to come in and you want to learn and you want to get information, provide feedback, impact the vendor's development roadmaps, and not have anybody even contact you a single time afterwards, you're able to do that. At the same time, if you do have certain vendors that you choose that you want to engage with, you can request additional information from them. You can request a product demo, sales enablement materials, or you can go ahead and join the breakout room afterwards and actually interact with some of these vendors' CEOs directly. You can ask them clarifying questions. You can challenge some of the things that they're doing. You can share your ideas with them. Um, so the idea is to really let the person who's attending control their path. And they can really have it be their event and have that experience be exactly what they want.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, Steve, of the 8 presentations, 5 of them are the CEOs. So, it is a really unique opportunity, as Amy mentioned, to have interaction, if you choose to, after in those breakout rooms with the
Mhm.
CEOs of these companies.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. So let's talk about some channel stuff that doesn't directly involve you, because there may be companies that just choose not to work with you guys, but they still have, some kind of partner program. So let's talk. I want to hear soup to nuts. What all should we look for in a partner program as an MSP?
Well, Amy, I mean, you want to take first crack at that since you have it
Sure.
from the MSP side, and then I'll chime in, like, because I think I have some good ideas around how to build better relationships with a vendor, because I was
Mhm.
obviously on the vendor side. So I'll let Amy take the first part of that.
Yeah. So when I was heading up marketing for a service provider, there were two things that I looked at when I was looking at an MDF fund strategy. The first was, who are the vendors who are our top, let's say 2 to 3 vendors. Those were the first that I would always go to. Um, at the same time, though, a lot of times those were, some of the biggest vendors. You may be a small fish in a big pond when you're talking to them. And so then what I would also look at is, who are some of the smaller vendors that may be in our technology stack, but we're going to be a bigger fish within their pond. And so I would always consider those where I could bring in current customers. So if there was some type of an event and I could have a combination, and I think this is something that really gets undervalued, is utilizing a happy current customer to sell and to attract a new customer. So any type of an event where I could have that interaction and I could have a genuinely happy customer interact with a prospect or something like that. Basically, that customer put together a much better sales story than any of my marketing materials, anybody on our sales team, all of those types of things. So I would look at, number one, who were the vendors that made the most sense, and that we worked with most often. where were the vendors that would be willing to work with me so that I could create a program that was somewhat customized? And then lastly, looking at who had programs where I could utilize the value that I had built and the relationship that I had built with my current customer in order to sell to others. That was kind of my strategy.
I like that strategy. Let's hear from Matt.
Yeah. So, one of the things we identified early on when I was at ID Agent was, the need for sales enablement materials. Uh,
Mhm.
even though ID Agent was probably one of the easiest selling like tools out there, we still found that MSPs struggled to talk about security in a way that resonated with their end users. And so we started, I mean, it was a slow process, but we started building out a partner portal where we started putting together social media graphics, campaigns for our partners, and eventually started building out an incredible library of resources where an MSP could white label pretty much anything. We then got into, and really Dan Tomaszewski, who's now at Kaseya after ID got acquired, was the person most responsible for our program. But they started building out, PowerPoint slide decks, not just selling our product, but selling really around the entire security bundle so that an MSP can, close an entire deal, not just close dark web monitoring. And I think, we have seen the industry follow suit. Datto, I would say, led kind of, with the first vendor that I can see that I saw doing it that way. And, we emulated a lot of what they did. And now you see so many people following that same playbook. And there's really great, like Dan now, does it fully, I can say, with his powered services. And the level of details that are going into these programs have significantly increased. Now, emerging vendors are still in the beginning stages of that. And so, having conversations, having advisory councils, I think is critically important. And I also think it's really important, and it's an underrated thing in the space. I don't know that every MSP understands how important it is to have relationships with their vendors. And it goes both ways. But I am telling you, if you proactively reach out to a vendor and really start to, build out a relationship, uh, think you'll find that they'll listen more, things will get done quicker, at least for you as an MSP. And you start getting featured on thought leadership panels, and you start getting noticed more by the industry at large. I can think of many examples where I would feature an MSP who I got to know on the road on a panel of mine, and then another vendor would see them and be like, "Oh, I should have him or her on our panel," and so forth. And the beauty of that is, Steve, if you're on a bunch of panels with vendors, well, you can repurpose that content. It could just be a picture. It might not be relevant to your end users, but just by showing that you're continually being featured as a thought leader all around, you're going to create a perception that, oh, wow, Steve must know what he's doing because everybody else is going to him. So, I think there's lots of ways that MSPs can take advantage of those relationships with the vendors.
Yeah, really
I
does give a lot of credibility. Uh, Steve, if I can just interject something, one of the things that Matt, when we first started talking, when I was talking to him about joining the team, so the ID agent campaign, we actually ran one of their campaigns. And when I was it was the most successful integrated sales and marketing campaign that we did as an MSP. So it was one of the things that started off our conversations. It was something where we were able to show value to both our current customers and our prospects by utilizing their materials, and it was incredibly successful for us.
so I've got to say, I think that developing a relationship is the most important thing MSPs should be doing their with their partners. For example, the oh gosh, the sales rep, that's like your dude. That's your guy. That's the person you talk to, every time you need to reach out to that vendor. primary point of contact. You should not look at that person as the enemy. They're not always trying to sell you something. They don't always look at you as a source of commission and a way to go out and buy that new whatever.
Yep.
Sometimes they legitimately just want to help you. Sometimes they think, it's kind of cool. I like talking to him. We could be buddies. If we lived closer, we'd hang out. There's nothing wrong with developing a professional relationship with these people. Now, my opinion is, as much as I like to joke and have fun, you should try and keep it professional and don't skew the lines between professional and personal and start sending them inappropriate memes because that's probably not okay. Um, but you should consider them a colleague and somebody that is there, like, trying to help you, they want you to succeed. Even if it's selfishly so they can make more money, they do want you to succeed.
Yeah. And, I add to that, you know, building out that relationship, particularly if you go to events, most vendors have somebody that's considered to be their channel chief or their product evangelist. And those are, to me, those are that is one of the most important relationships because if you do have an issue, and sometimes your account manager it might be above what they can do, they can do anything. But if you reach out to the person who you've met at a bunch of events, I think it goes a long way. And it's funny, like as literally as we're talking about this, like I got a text message from, you won't be able to see it, but this guy Philip Walker, who I've met many years ago, and he's an MSP owner. And that's my point. He's got my personal text message at phone number, and so if he had an issue, he's just going to text me,
Mhm.
and that's going to jump to the top of my list typically. It's natural human reaction. Like this guy's directly reaching out to me, I'm going to respond to that. But that's to my point is these are relationships that he's made an effort, I've made an effort. It's both ways. But you know when you build those relationships, you tend to get answers quicker. You tend to get treated a little better. I know people don't like to hear that, but it's no different than an MSP. You have your certain customers who build relationships, and yeah, it's the way the world works. But I think it's important to make the effort. Go up, introduce yourself at these events, and I mean, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Just be like, "Hey, Amy, I'm a partner of yours. In case we've never met, just I'd like to introduce myself." And I would also say, let them know if you are somebody that's willing to be on panels or be on a webinar, because I can tell you it's time consuming to continually think of new people to feature in certain types of panels and things like that. And I would always love when MSPs would tell me, "Hey, I'd love to be on a panel next time you do one on MSSPs or things like that." So I would proactively let them know you're willing to do that type of stuff, because I personally, I'm tired of the same ones being featured. I want to see more people being featured. So that's my small tip there.
Yeah.
So, Amy, I have a question. We talked pretty heavily about sales enablement materials so far. What do you do when you find a product, emerging vendor? It's a fantastic product. It works well. It does all the things you need it to do. It's a great price. It's a no-brainer to sign up with them, but they don't have any sales enablement materials. How do you work with them, or what can an MSP say to convince them that they need to get some?
Yeah. So that's a tough one because what I wound up doing a lot of times is I would actually interview the vendor and then I would interview our techs and I'd actually write that. So I was kind of like the technology translator where I would take what they would say in a very, very technical terms and put it into more business language. One of the things that we talk about with these vendors is ideally those sales enablement materials. What we want is something that we can just take, make some very minor changes, put it directly in front of the consumer. Because I've never met, just like any tech that's out there who always has a million things to do. I have never met a fully staffed sales and marketing team. So we talk to them about that now. Honestly, up until this point, I had to do a lot of that translation, but I think it's having those relationships and those conversations and explaining to them what it is. I think it's really giving them an idea of what your customer needs are and giving those needs to them so that they can put together those materials for you. But it's really based off of the relationship that Matt was talking about before. And if I can just make one comment, you were talking about salespeople, because I've managed marketing teams, I've managed sales teams, and the thing that I always told the sales team was, "You are IT consultants first and foremost." What I told my teams, and that is your primary role. Now, of course, you happen to have a quota. No one's going to say that that isn't there, but the best way to achieve your quota is to just go in there, be a great consultant, build relationships, and do the blocking and tackling, the hard work day in and day out. Sales, the thing that I say about sales is, a good salesperson is not the wide receiver that makes the great catch in the end zone. They're the running back that's getting 5-10 yards every time that they get the ball.
See, and I felt like maybe they were just the guy getting pummeled as the other team goes for the quarterback. But I like your analogy better. So was there a particular type of like document that you found worked best when compiling all these sales enablement documents? Like I'm thinking, sometimes they got the flyers, the brochures, the battle cards,
Yeah.
like what kind of stuff worked best?
So I would actually take the graphics, the information, and I would put it into a sales presentation. So because I wasn't going to go in there and hand them a bunch of documents or send them a bunch of documents. I might send like a one-page sell sheet, a big
Hmm.
on one page. It could, because to me, it's easy to rate 5 pages on something. It's hard to rate one page or a few sentences on something. So to me, the one page is what gets you in the door. And then I would take the information and I'd put that into a sales presentation. And for sales presentations, the way I would always start it is it's about them. A lot of times as salespeople, we want to go in there and we want to start telling them all the stuff that's great about us. And the first line of all of my sales presentations was always, "Let's talk about you." And the first thing that we would do would be to talk about their pain points and their challenges around whatever it was, cybersecurity, those types of things. And that's when I would arm the salespeople with marketing materials. They were marketing materials that had a very strong sales focus and a very strong customer focus.
Yeah. And so I kind of want to I'll answer both. So, you were talking about, now I already, of course I forgot what line of thought I was going to go into there. But so now I'm going to answer the second question, which was about what provided the most value. So I'll just give it from my perspective, from the feedback I received from, MSPs at the time in our program. They absolutely loved the social graphics that we would provide based, around security. Just because, I mean, social media is, you have to put out content and you have to put it out consistently. And it's, who has time for that? And
Good
a
point.
lot of the smaller MSPs don't have a marketing person full time. And so having those social graphics, and we would give, like, not just the social graphic, we'd give you a starter, like a boilerplate. Here's what you could also write. Now, we'd strongly encourage you to adjust it and make it right for your audience. But we would give you those and kind of give you those for the month. And that was really popular because they got a lot of use out of those. And the other ones were the PowerPoint slides. There's presentations take forever to put together. We all, especially if you're a perfectionist and you're like really trying to hone in on your message. At IdeaGen, we would put together these presentations, and I feel like we were getting them 80-90% of the way. And of course, you add, you take out slides, you put in things, but you had the bones of a presentation, and we got incredible feedback around that. And now I did remember what I was going to say earlier, because Steve, you asked about, like, well, if you have this vendor who's got incredible, it's a no brainer, but they don't have the sales enablement, I don't know that that would stop me, especially if I was an MSP owner and I generally know how to sell pretty well. What I would say is just provide that feedback right away in your partnership, um, and tell them, hey, in order for this to, I'm going to sign if you tell me that this is, reasonable down your roadmap for sales enablement, because these are the things I'm going to need to make this partnership work. And here are 5 things that I would suggest that you start adding to your sales enablement. And the smart vendors will do those pretty quickly. And really, that is what makes a great partnership is both get getting feedback. I mean, some of the best features we ended up having came directly from our partners. So, if a vendor doesn't listen at all, unless they have one of the most incredible products, it's going to be hard for them to survive in the channel. Period. So I would voice those things early on. And we go back to this relationship part. If you are somebody who's willing to give a little bit of your time, it goes a long way in building that relationship with your vendor.
Mhm.
They're going to appreciate you a ton for that information.
Let's talk about this webinar panel thing. So you said that vendors are constantly looking for people to be in these panels.
Mhm.
Why should an MSP want to do this?
So, I mean, I'll give you a great example. Well, one, I think it's a good place to practice. You know, you're not necessarily on a panel. Like if I'm asking an MSP to be on a panel, they're speaking to their peers. It's not end users typically.
Mhm.
Um, but it is a place to hone your skill set. It's also a way to use it as a marketing tool for yourself, right? Like I said, like, hey, Steve, you're on this panel with ConnectWise or somebody could say, or Datto. You're able to take a snippet of that and say, hey, I had an awesome time being featured on the panel at DattoCon, and show that to your community on LinkedIn. And again, they're seeing you now out there. The one example that comes to my mind, I've shared this a couple times, Lisa Shore, it was an MSP, but she also has a business called Shore Success. And I thought what she was doing was really interesting. And I had her on one of our panels, and then Dan ended up having Lisa on another panel inside Powered Services, and then IT Glue decided to feature her on a GlueX talk, and then she got featured at GlueX, the event. It snowballs, and that's just within one vendor. That was all under Kaseya. I mean, imagine then if others noticed and start bringing that person in, and that's why I think it's a really important thing to do is to put yourself out there, because it can really snowball into a lot more opportunities. And again, taking that and showing your audience, hey, like I'm I'm considered a thought leader in my own community, and this is why you should listen to me. Now, some people might think it's vain or things like that, but it's marketing. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but
Uh,
that's the way I saw it.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that's why, most MSPs or service providers start with owner-led sales teams. And the reason that that happens is because that's exactly what they're doing. They're usually a presence in the local business community. They're on councils, they're being featured on panels, all of those types of things. And that's how they're out there. That's how they're building those relationships in a very organic manner. And they have that credibility, and that's how sales come through the door. So it's the first step on it is definitely the hardest. And I could speak on that from experience. But I think once you kind of open the door, as Matt said, it all just starts to flow basically.
What gosh, I got to get your website back up here. So I see you've got a few other things that you guys are doing. So Channel Explorer. What is this?
So that is something we're going to be launching in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
It's kind of the second phase of our channel program, and I would describe it in a way, a combination of LinkedIn and YouTube for the channel, but really heavily focused on the video component of it. And again, the idea is to, on both sides of the ecosystem, give more people a voice. And again, this stems back to what I was saying about I want to hear from more MSPs. I want to hear from more people on the emerging vendor side. So on the MSP side, if you're somebody who does, and there are a lot of MSPs who want to be considered thought leaders among their own peers, we're seeing this a lot more lately, but maybe don't have the platform for it, right? And we want to try to give them a bigger platform. And so it's putting out video content that you think would be um, something that your community cares about. Um, on the technical side, it might even be just, hey, I found this thing in XYZ vendor. This is an easier way to do it. The how-to videos. I mean, we see YouTube's full of that, but we think we can have that in this community. And then on the vendor side, you know, not every vendor can travel the way other vendors can. Not every vendor can afford to speak at events the way other vendors can, especially in the very early stages. And so giving more people an opportunity to create a thought leadership space for themselves. Uh, Also, more people within an organization. So I would say to you, when I was at ID Agent, I was the person at all the events. So a lot of people thought I owned the company, but that wasn't the truth. Kevin Lancaster owned the company. And if I had a platform like this today, I would say, Kevin, why don't you start putting out videos from more of the entrepreneur CEO level and see if that resonates with the MSP owners? And I'll do more of the boots on the ground events, that type of marketing. And Amy, you go do something around more of the operational marketing and whatnot. We'll all find our own little voice and we're going to resonate with different audiences. But guess what? We're going to all elevate the brand of channel program this way. And the same thing would go for another vendor that's coming out. Everybody that's, starting to put out good content, educational content is going to elevate their brand.
I agree with that. And Steve, whether it's channel pitch or channel cache or explore, everything that we're doing is geared around three key objectives. Number one is helping IT service providers grow. Number two is increasing meaningful communication and collaboration between the service providers and the vendors. And then third is really supporting technical colleagues through community and thought leadership. And so each of the things, whether it's, like I said, explore or cache, they each hit some of those objectives. Some hits one more than others, another hits a different one more than others, but all of them are really geared towards accomplishing those three goals, which we feel are very positive and uplifting for the industry as a whole.
That I love. And I think there should be more companies out there that are trying to do this. So seriously, I commend you guys for what you're doing, truly. Um, Matt, do you have any other thoughts on what MSPs should be looking for when it comes to a partner program?
Um, I think one, ask the questions, ask those up front. Yeah. I mean, you made that point, Steve, like sort of ask those questions before you sign the paperwork, right? Ask them what their partner program is going to look like. Do they have partner advisory council if you want to be involved potentially? I think the things to look at are if they're able to show you, if they have a partner portal, for example, they could show you some examples of the materials, show you examples of like the latest, the most recent, I would say, because somebody could have a vast library of partner enablement materials, but if the last time they updated it was a year ago, then that's not great. So I would be on the lookout for that type of stuff. I still, as I would say, I wouldn't hesitate away from, or I wouldn't necessarily move away from an emerging vendor who doesn't fully have that figured out yet, but ask the questions, make sure that, you're having a dialogue around it. Those to me are the things that I guess I would look for at first. But again, I wouldn't shy away from an emerging vendor who doesn't have it yet. But I think if you ask the right questions, you'll get a sense of if that's a path they're going down. And if it's not, like I said, you could be part of that change for them.
I like that. Amy, is there anything that you would like to help MSPs think outside the box with when it comes to working with vendors?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think what I've seen with a lot of MSPs is they're great operationally, they're great at customer service, um, they're great at technology, but the biggest challenge in the business tends to be that forward part of the business. It's the marketing and the sales, um, and putting together those components in a way that enables them to move from, like what I was saying, the owner led MSP where they're driving all the sales to something where you've got a team. I think that's one of the hardest transitions for an MSP. And it's why we have so many MSPs that hit, a few $1 million and never scale past that. Um, so if we're able to provide more thought leadership around that, more tools and things so that they can go ahead and grow, that would, to me, that would be a huge win. And if we can increase their influence so that vendors are rewarded and incentivized to be more responsive and more transparent, I think that would be a win as well.
Awesome. Well, Matt, Amy, thank you guys so much for hopping on here today and having a chat um, with me about channel program and about channel programs that vendors um, could or should be doing. And I really appreciate the insights on what MSPs should do in order to just better utilize the stuff that their vendors are able to help with.
Yep. No, we're happy to be here, and we certainly appreciate you having us.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. It's
Absolutely.
great to speak with you.
Absolutely. Well, hey, for those of you that are still hanging around, uh, don't forget, like, subscribe, ring the bell, whatever the YouTubes do, right? Just do it all, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down. No, not that one. Hit all the buttons though, so that way you get notified the next time we have your new favorite vendor on an episode. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll catch you at the next one.